Hey guys, welcome to another Blender tutorial. This one's going to be a bit different from the rocket robot one that I just completed, so I hope you have fun and still get something out of this. Before I begin though, I wanted to thank all the new subscribers to the channel. As you know, it's a new channel and every new like and every new subscribe really helps me out. So I do appreciate that and just wanted to say thank you. If you like what I'm doing, you like the videos and such, go ahead and give them a like. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. Hit the bell icon so you're notified when I put out new work. And again, I do appreciate all the support. So in this tutorial, we're going to model this medieval candle holder. And I wanted to note a couple things before we jumped into this. So you can see in the bottom right corner of my screen here, I downloaded a reference offline, and there's tons of these, so they're really easy to find. What I wanted to comment on was these things are made by hand. And as many of you know, so many things we create in CG look fake because they're too perfect, right? They're way too sharp, they're way too symmetrical, they're just too perfect. So you have to remember with something like this, it was in fact, or they were in fact, created by a human being by hand, which means chances are every single one they created was slightly different than the one they created before. So keep that in mind as you model this, because that actually gives you some latitude to make little tiny adjustments or things that don't have to be perfectly a certain way, because you want to add that realism where it's not perfect, right? And that's the key. All right, so that out of the way, let's jump into this. So what I want to do first is kind of get sort of a block out so I can get the overall proportion and height of this. Now, I looked it up when I did the scene a few months back, and these things stand about 6 to 8 inches tall, at least on the research that I did. We're not going to worry about modeling it to scale right now, but just something to note if you wanted to, use it for something where you needed to be scale. So I'm going to hit Shift A, I'm going to drop in a cube, I'm going to hit S for scale, and I'm going to scale everything but the Z. So S and then Shift Z to not scale it on Z, and we'll get it somewhere about there. It looks pretty good. And then now I want to scale it only on Z. So Shift, then Z. I'm going to look at it from the side. And I think that's pretty good, maybe a little bit taller. Okay, then Control A, apply scale. All right, and that's our handle. Yay! Okay, so before we do anything else, let's subdivide this, and not with a subsurf modifier, because that will look like this, and that's not what we want. So let's turn that off. What we want is even quads. So let's go into edit mode. Let's Control R to throw a loop here, throw a loop there, right? Even quads at the top. Look at it from the side, okay? Control R. Now, we're just going to scroll. In my case, I'm using a tablet, so I'm just scrolling the wheel, the thing on the tablet to get as close to perfect squares as I can get. Again, they don't have to be perfect, but you want to look for even quads is what you want, right? So this is what you want, right? Even quads. All the way around everywhere. Okay. Now, if I turn on my sub D, it's basically holding the shape, right? I'm going to put on shade smooth here, but we can still do something else to tighten this up, right? So let's add a bevel modifier. Let's put the subdivision modifier below the bevel modifier. Let's take the bevel modifier, switch it to angle. Okay. And that's not what we want. Let's bring this down to say something about there for now. We can come back and adjust this if we need. All right. Cool. Now, that being said, I'm going to turn that stuff off right now. We don't need it while we're working. Okay. So let's go ahead and just kind of start blocking out how this is going to form, and we can worry about this detailed stuff in a little while. So let's start with the bottom curve. Let's go in here. Let's just shade it flat again so it doesn't look confusing. Let's grab these 4 faces here. Look from the side. We're going to use the spin tool for this. We're going to shift left click, bring that over. We're going to make sure that we're on the x-axis, which I believe we already are. Right now it's at the 12 steps, and let's go ahead and just spin this. If we hold down Control, we'll spin it in increments, but I'll show you how we can change that anyway. If I let go, that's not really what I want. That doesn't really look good, right? Let's open up the angle, or the panel here. Let's switch this to 90 degrees. Okay. We can probably get away with fewer steps because we are using a sub D workflow. So maybe let's try 8. And I think that'll be okay. Now, using these arrows here, we can position this curve to where it makes sense. And really look at this, because if we make this curve too broad, so for example, if it's something like this, right? Right, that's kind of straight there. Then our platform can't breach this curved metal here. So it would have to stop here, which would put way too much space. So this is a really tight curve here. So adjust these arrows until it reaches, you know, where you need it to be. You want this to be a very, very tight curve. And to me, that looks pretty good. So we'll leave it at 8. We'll snap out of there. And there's our bottom curve. Let's select those faces again, go back to the side view, and let's just extrude those. I use extrude faces along normals, and let's just bring it out to say something like that. Well, we can adjust that later if we need. Okay. So if I were to turn shade smooth back on and then turn these back on, this is what we get. All right. Pretty cool. But we're not done. Let's go ahead and just click these 2 buttons here. This will turn off these modifiers when we're in edit mode, and that's what we want. Okay, we're not going to worry about the shade smooth right now. We're going to work with it. Okay, let's grab these top faces. Let's do this again. So let's look at the top one here. The top one's a much bigger curve. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab our spin tool, shift click up here, and let's just spin this to where it looks pretty much kind of the angle we need. It looks to be about something there. Now, because this is a bigger curve, we need to increase our steps. So let's increase it. We can probably get away with 12 here. And let's just move this into position where it looks the way it's supposed to look. So let's adjust this arrow here. That looks pretty good. Maybe something like that. And you can also grab this white line here, and you can further drag this to work that curve a little bit. I think that's going to be where I want it. And that looks good to me. So again, I'll snap out of that tool. Come on. There it is. Okay. And then the same thing, Alt E, extrude faces along normal. And let's just bring this down a little bit to say something like here. Yeah, why not? Okay. Now, to get this piece in here, I mean, in reality, that person might have made these as separate pieces and then welded them together or melted them. I don't know. I'm not a metalsmith. I don't know how they make these, but the way I found where I was able to kind of mimic this shape was I took these vertices here, and I'm just going to shift click them over to about there. Do the same thing with these. Sorry, not shift click. I meant double G. Just double tap G just to bring those over like so. And just to flatten this out, right? What we're doing is we're creating this kind of flatten out. And we're going to have to work with it a little bit later. Right now, we're just kind of blocking out how it's gonna look. We'll grab these faces again, go to the side view, and we're going to, once again, use our spin tool. I love the spin tool, by the way. And we're going to spin it like this. Say something about, there's kind of cool. And then again, we have to make a decision. Right now it's at 13 steps. We can probably get away with something around 12 for this. We'll just move this into position to where it flows correctly. Maybe something like this. And we'll increase. Maybe something like that. All right. Again, it doesn't have to be exact. You just want it to be something that resembles that. Let's just keep it back here. Yeah, I like that. Let's snap out of here. Okay, so now we've got this thing going on. All right. Now, this, how it tapers into a point here, that's actually pretty easy to do. What we can do is, I like being in vertice mode. Now, it kind of flattens off here, so we could do this a couple different ways. We can just grab these 4 faces, go to the side view, Alt E again, and just bring this up a little bit. And you can see it's a little bit tilted. So, I mean, there's ways we can straighten that out. You can do like a shift Z, and then while you're scaling, hit 0 just to flatten that out. I use machine tools for stuff like that, which is a free add-on, by the way. I can link to the description. So you can see it does this curve, and then it kind of straightens out for this point right here. So if we look at it from the side, if we need to bring this up a little bit, we don't want to go too far because it's, you know, it's not exactly straight here. But once we get to a place that we like, I like switching to, you know, to vertex mode. I'm going to grab my knife tool, and I'm just going to cut there, do the same thing on the other side, cut there, cut there. Okay, now we're just going to take these. We're going to get rid of these faces by hitting X. Faces. And let's just get rid of all these. Okay, so now we have this. Then we'll just grab these here. Let's just fill this with F, and then we'll fill in where we need to. Fill that with F. Let's take this point and this point. Let's connect those with J, and there we go. So we've got our point, right? Now, if you were to switch out of edit mode, this is what we get now, right? So you can see in the photo that it's not quite as thin as this, and that's okay. I mean, the only way I would have been able to do that would have been to make this part thinner, and then compress these down one at a time until I got to where it was more like that. And you can absolutely do that if you want to go through all the work to make it that thin. For me, I didn't really care. It would have been a lot of extra work, and it wouldn't have made that big of a difference. To me, this still looks pretty cool, right? You can go in here now. We'll go back into edit mode. Let's throw some loops in here. That looks pretty even to me. And then we can kind of just finagle this to where it kind of works. Remember, it's handmade, so don't be too concerned about, you know, oh, it's not exactly even or whatever. These things are handmade. So just, you know, adjust these points until it looks, you know, that didn't grab the whole thing, until it gets to a point where it looks good. For example, if this looks too like straight, for example here, then, you know, we could just kind of move these a little bit, and really the more kind of randomized you make this, the better it's going to look anyway, because it's not going to look so perfect, which is what we want. All right, so there is that. Now let's go ahead and save it. Remember, save often. Let's drop a cylinder on here just so we can get an idea of where that is going to sit and how big it's going to be. 24 is pretty good. Let's scale it on Z, something like that. Switch to the top view, slide this over, back to the side view. Let's drop this down, and let's bring it down even more. These are pretty thin. Okay, now let's just get it in place where we think it's going to go. Don't worry about how this isn't super sharp yet. We're going to tighten all that up. It looks like we can get away with something about here. Not as close as I like. We could have made this curve a little tighter, but it's not bad at all. Right. Now let's just take a look at it. I think that's a pretty good diameter on the base here, but I mean, you can make it bigger. It might be a little bit smaller in the picture. So if we were to take this, scale it, Shift Z, so we don't make it any thinner, make it a tad bit smaller. Yeah, I think that works. Okay, let's just move it back on Y. And this just gives us an idea of where that's going to sit. And I may come back and change it again. That's just an idea. Okay, save it. Now let's get to the fun part. Let's finish the handle here before we work on the base and the legs, and we're almost done. Okay, so we're going to go back into edit mode. Now what we need to do is figure out where we want this twist to go. And again, up to you. Twist it as much or as little as you want. So looking at the reference, sorry, I keep kicking things here. Looking at the reference, it looks like from the top it starts just below the curve here and ends just, I don't know, it's hard to visualize, but maybe about an inch above the platform. But again, we're not really shooting for scale here. So let's just grab an edge that seems reasonable. Maybe this one, and then maybe this one here. Let's just do that one. Make sure I selected the edge all the way around. And then we're going to hit V as in Victor. Okay, snap that back with a left click. Now select all the faces, hit P for Paul, and then choose by loose parts. And what that's going to do is make 3 separate pieces here. Top curve, center, bottom curve. And before you do anything else, click on the center and change the origin to geometry. It might look like it's there, but if it's even slightly off, this next part won't work. Okay, now save it in case Blender, wigs out. But here's where the real fun happens. We want to create this twist, right? Grab this piece. We already have a bevel. We already have a bevel and a sub D modifier applied. Now we're going to add a simple deform. And then we're going to make sure that we're on the Z axis. And we're going to deform this by 360 degrees. And there we go. Now, of course, if you wanted to go more, by all means, let's try 360 times 2. And that looks a little too twisted for my liking. Let's try 360 times 1.5. Yeah, I think I like that the best, actually. Okay, and there we go. Now, this is important. If you try to blend these together, watch what happens. So let me save this really quick in case something weird goes on. I'm going to grab this, this, and this, and I'm going to hit Control J to put these back together. And look what happened. Right, we lose our twist. So for here, once you're happy with the twist, you got it exactly where you like it. If we look at wireframe mode, right, everything lines up, right, including our bevel. All right, everything looks good. Cool. Why is the bevel a 1-segment bevel? Let's make that a 2-segment bevel. Okay. To do that on all of these. That's weird. I wonder, I must not have noticed that before. Make sure that your bevel is a 2-segment bevel, not a 1-segment bevel. Okay, so everything lines up. Everything looks good. I'm going to jump out of wireframe here. Go into your centerpiece and apply only the simple deform. Leave the bevel and subdiv alone. Apply the twist. Now select all of these because they're using the exact same bevel and they're using the exact same subdiv. So when you merge these together, they're all going to use the same modifiers. So if I hit Control J now, right, now your twist is still there. Now here, you can see there's a line here because we have duplicate vertices. So we're going to go back into edit mode, select the whole thing, M, merge by distance. It removed 16 vertices. Now watch. Nice and smooth, right? Beautiful. And that's what we want. So our handle is now done. Right? Control S to save. The rest of this is super, super easy. So let's go into here and we could put a bevel modifier on this, or you can just bevel it, up to you. I kind of, depending on what I'm working on, I go either way. Let's put a bevel modifier on this, switch this to angle. And let's put a sub D modifier on this. Let's shade it smooth. Okay, now I always like to switch into wireframe mode and check my bevel. Don't worry about this yet. We're going to deal with that. So if I turn this off, then I slowly holding the shift key, that I can see that's pretty much what I want there. Okay, let's jump out of wireframe. Okay, cool. Now to get this, we'll do the same thing here. We'll turn these off while we're working. We don't need those on. Okay, so we want to keep our quad workflow here. We're going to inset this, and then we're just going to hit Shift-R. Just going to bring this in a few more times, like so. You want, again, see how it's even? And something like that. So I'm going to do this again, but this time with both sides. Okay, Shift-R to something like that. Okay, then just select only this top one. Okay, and we could just inset this again. This is going to become our spike there. So that's what it looks like now. If we go into wireframe mode now, okay, looks nice and even. This bottom one, what we're going to do is select this bottom one, go into face, poke faces. That's going to give us triangles. Now to make quads out of this, we're going to select every other edge like so, and just Control X to get rid of them. Now we have quads. All right. That's what we want. Now for this one, we're going to do the same thing, although it doesn't really matter just yet, but we'll go ahead and do it anyway. Okay, there we go. Now, to make this little spike thing, and again, you don't have to make this little spike thing because if you put a candle on here, you're never going to see it. But if you wanted to make the spike thing, just grab these. And I use Alt-E, extrude faces along normals, and just, of course, Blender's acting weird. Let's just bring this up, something like that. Let's scale it in, something like that. Okay, let's get out of wireframe mode. Right. But again, if you're not going to put a candle on here, cool. If you're going to put a candle on here, this little spiky thing isn't really necessary. Right. And if you look at this one, it's kind of bent and weird. You could do the same thing. Let's just add some loop cuts in here, something like that. Okay. And you can just go in here at random, just grab one of these, just kind of move it, just make it look, grab this top one, kind of give it a bit of a, oops, I did that wrong. Let's grab the whole thing, give it a bit of a rotation and right there. See? But again, not necessary if you're planning on putting a candle on here. Okay, so there is that. Now, save. Let's do the legs. So if we look at the legs here, there's 4 legs. And you can see they're not even the same. Look at the curvature on this one versus this one, right? So again, that's where the realism is. Oops, let's go back into our main part. Let's grab these 4 faces here. Let's Shift-D to duplicate, left click to snap it back, P by selection this time, and that's going to make a separate face there. Let's go into edit mode, select these, and let's just extrude them along, oops, wrong key. Let's extrude them along Y to get something like this. Let's look at it from the side. We're going to go back to our spin tool. Let's drop this here. We're going to do the same thing. Now for this, we can probably get it, it's so small, we can probably get away with 6 or 8. Let's do 6. And then let's position this to where this makes sense. And I don't know why that's 96. Let's make that 90. And then let's position this to where it's correct. Yep, I like that. Snap out of here. Okay, and then we'll select these from the side. Extrude along normals. Let's just bring it down. Say something like that, right? Now they all kind of taper in. It looks like they all kind of taper in differently. We're just going to hit scale, just kind of do that. Right, add some edges here so you get that relatively even quad topology in there, and that'll help with your subdivision. Okay, right. And don't worry about, again, you can go in here, once you get them all in, you can start deforming them separately to make them look a little different. Right now, we just want to get the legs where they need to be. We have the 1, we want to make 4, and you could do this however you want. You could add an empty here, and then try to use an empty as a means of creating a radial array. I find that I don't always have success doing that, and I don't know why. I've gotten it to work, but then I fail at it a lot of times. I like to use hard ops for this just because it makes it easy. Even though I'm not doing Booleans and stuff, hard ops works great for this kind of stuff. But you can do whatever you want. You can even just copy one leg at a time and just rotate it, say 45 degrees until you get, the ones you want. So for example, rotate it on Z, 45 degrees. Really? Z, 45 degrees. Okay. And then just move it into place, copy it with a Shift-D, say rotate Z negative 90 degrees and put that one over there, right? Again, because these are made by hand, you can just keep doing that and that just adds your realism, right? Because they're not exactly the same. What I do is I use hard ops, mesh tools, radial array, and then I scroll my little wheel till I get 4. Oops. 4, and I'm done. That's how I do it. That's why I use add-ons. I didn't want to use a third-party add-on here, but for something like this, it just saves time. But you can do it however you want. It doesn't really matter. Okay. Now, from here, I want to apply the array, but not the subdivision. And you can get rid of this. We can apply this. Not the subdivision or the bevel. I still want those to be where they are. I just wanted to make that an array. Now I can just take this whole thing, rotate it on Z 45 degrees. And then there I go. All right. Now, from here, I could just separate all these so then I can work with them independently. Say, for example, I don't want these to be exactly the same, right? So I select all of these, P by loose parts. Okay, now they're going to be individuals. So again, go through here and, just make some random little changes to all of these, right? And that just will make, we'll just add to the realism so they're not all the same. This is important. You don't want all of these to look exactly the same, right? Again, this is made by hand. So tweak it a little bit, mess stuff up. And we're going to mess this up procedurally as well, but, at least get some bigger, a little bit more obvious edits in there. Like something like this, for example, go extreme. Say, grab these faces here and kind of give it a weird thing here. Right. You just want them to look a little different. You don't want them to all be the same. Right? But that's it. We're essentially done. But one last thing we can do for the realism here is we'll start with our handle here. We're going to go into our modifiers. We're going to add a displace. Okay. We'll say new. We'll call this, let's just call it iron. Go into here, go to clouds. And that looks obviously funky. Let's change the size. I don't know, something that might work, something like this. Let's go back into the modifier now. Let's go something really low, like let's say 0.3. No, let's say 0.01. Okay, that's a little bit better. What you want here, let's try 0.03. You see I don't know if this will translate in the video very well, but what you want here is this to look a little distorted and hammered, right? If I switch to my IQ EV, you can see this a little bit better, right? See how this looks not flat? That's what we want. Maybe 0.3 is a little high, so maybe 0.15. No, 0.015. Yeah, I like that better. So see how it's not flat, right? It looks like it's hammered a little bit. That might even be still too much. Let's just go 0.01. Okay, that's what we want. But notice this. Right, that's because our deformation, or displace rather, is interfering with our bevel here. Okay, so what we can do, let's get out of wireframe. We can take the displacement. Let's adjust the mid-level to where that gets fixed, and that looks to be pretty good there. Let's just double check it. Right, so you see what that does is it just gives a bit of a micro detail to it. You still want to go through and you still want to grab edges and, kind of just mess with them a little bit, just to give it a little bit more unevenness and realism. And you could, of course, even sculpt this if you wanted to. In my original piece, that's what I did. I went in and I sculpted it and then baked it down. But, that's for what I'm doing here, that's not really necessary. Go through, adjust edges. You want it to look bent and deformed and tweaked in some areas, right? And then you don't want it to look flat. So that's what we did here. We do the same thing here. In fact, if you look at our base, in fact, now that we look at it, this is probably a little bit more rounded. So I'm going to go back into my bevel. Something like that is what we want, I think. Yeah, just oh, that's what it was doing up there. Okay, so what's happening here is the bevel. Right? So what we can do is if we wanted to still use our bevel modifier, you can obviously ditch it and just bevel manually, or we can switch this to weight. And then we can come in here and let's grab this. Oops. Let's grab this loop here. And we just go into our item here and just increase our mean bevel weight to 1. Right? And that puts the bevel there. Okay. Let's get rid of this edge here because it's causing us a problem. There we go. And then same thing here. We'll just grab this edge and this edge, bevel weight up to 1. There we go. And that's fixed now. Okay. Save it. Let's do the displacement modifier again. Now there are add-ons that will allow you to copy and paste one modifier to another modifier stack. I don't have it activated, so I don't use it. But again, because they're all, well, I would say because they're all using the same modifier, you can just select it, except for this. So so if we grab the legs, let's grab all the legs, leg, grab this. If we just copy the modifiers here, they use the exact same ones there. Then now it's applied to the legs too. Again, feel free to go in and adjust it. So let's say you wanted this one to be a little bit more. So 0.018, right? Then by all means do that, right? Just go through and adjust them. This one, we'll just do it manually. We'll just drop in the displace modifier. We know it's going to be 0.015. We're going to select iron. It's a little bit too much on this one, right? So let's go even lower. Let's just go 0.01. We might have to use a vertex group on this because it's messing with our little spike thing there, which we don't want. And if we make it even lower, then we're not going to see it. So if we were to take these, in fact, let's just do this. Select the whole thing, jump to the side, and let's just not choose these vertices here. Come on. Don't want any of these. Okay. And I don't want any of these. Actually, yes, I do. I want those. Don't want the spike. Okay, let's just go into here. Let's make a new vertex group. We'll call this base damage. We'll assign all those vertices. Go back into our modifier stack. Okay, now let's add the vertex group base damage. There we go. So now it's not affecting our spike, but it's affecting everything else. So if we bring this back up to 0.015, we can sort of see it. It's kind of messing with our bevel there, so we can just... Actually, it might not even be that bad. Yeah, we could also... Let's do this. Let's take this. Let's go back in here. We don't want these. Yeah, okay, let's just do this. Let's just remove. It should have removed it from there. Back into here. Make this a little bit bigger, say 0.02. We got to go big on this one, 0.3. Yeah, let's do it. But again, it's messing with this again, so we've got to take this out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go into edit mode. We're going to throw a curve here. We want that. We're going to get rid of this one. Go back into our, remove that from the group. Okay. And then this one, because the bevel's messing with it, let's just slide it out a little bit. And there we go. Okay. So now we've got some damage in the base there. And you can see we had to tweak it independently of everything else just because the geometry here is different, right? It's tighter here than it is here. So just little things you have to adjust, but that's okay. But now it's done. And there it is. Right. From here, what I would do is I'd probably label all these so I know what I was working with. But ultimately, I would just grab the legs. Actually, let's do this the other way. Let's grab the handle, the base, and all the legs. Control P to parent. Parent them there to the legs. So it's all one group now. And then I would export this as an FBX into Substance Painter, where I would then texture it and then come back into Blender and do whatever I was going to do with it. But there it is. There is the model of your medieval iron candle holder. I hope you guys learned something, or at least had some fun doing this. Apologies for the little extra sound effects from kicking the microphone and things like that. Also, guys, as a reminder, if you like what I'm doing, like the video, I'd appreciate that. Subscribe, I'd appreciate that even more. That'd be super awesome. All right, guys, for now, I'm going to sign off until the next one. Cheers.